Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for participating. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to whomever it may concern because we have participants from many countries and different time zones. So I welcome everybody and thanks again for joining and being participants of this webinar. So this webinar is organized by Linguistics and Pedagogy Webinars, and today we have a speaker named Chris Lonsdale. He has written a book and he's a bestseller in China. And today we will have a live webinar with him, and we will also get your queries and questions regarding the subjects or from the speaker. And we also have questions which were sent to us in registration forms. We will also try to answer them. And first, we will have a discussion with Sir, and then we will move on to live Q&A session. So be with us, and certificates will be granted to all participants who actively participate in the webinar and watch till the end. And we will also send a feedback form link, which the participants will have to fill in order to get the certificate of participation. So without further ado, we will Q1 Sir Chris Lonsdale. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hi, always. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. So, sir, tell participants something about yourself and your book, and
Okay.
then
Okay. So, my name's Chris Lonsdale, of course. I am a psychologist, an educator, and a linguist. I've been in Asia since 1981, most of that time in China, but in Hong Kong as well. And I've been in different parts of the region. I've spent many years as a corporate consultant working with senior level teams in big businesses. Could be um, Coca-Cola or Merrill Lynch or any of those big multinational companies, also medium-sized companies in Asia. And in 2016, I wrote my first book, which is 2006. I wrote my first book, which is called The Third Ear. 1, 2, 3 years, the third ear. You can learn any language. And then I went on to do my TEDx presentation on how to learn any language in 6 months, which you briefly mentioned. And very, very interesting. So far, there's 27 million views, I think, of that on YouTube alone. And lots of people have benefited from the ideas that I shared there. And then I wrote the book in China, in Chinese, on how to learn language in 6 months. And that book is the first book ever written in Chinese by a foreigner that's become a bestseller, as far as we know. Um, so that's sort of a short, a brief overview of my life.
right. So very interesting. So now, for viewers, we would like to, like you briefly mentioned about yourself. Now we will see what is in the book and what you have to share about the learning languages, and then we will take on the questions.
Okay. All right. So the presentation I did and the core that I've been working with now for very many years, there are 5 principles and there are 7 actions that a person can use to make the language learning process very different and very, very effective. Now, so I'll go into these core principles. And one of the questions that was posted before we got started was, what role does motivation and reasons play in the English learning process? Well, I'm going to say, well, it's not just for learning English, it's also for learning any language. But I can say that motivation and the reasons why you're learning is absolutely key. It's critical. If you don't have a reason and you don't have a motivation, then you're not going to learn. Um,
Right.
and the term that we use to sum that up is called relevance. It has to be relevant to you as an individual. Now, babies learning their mother tongue, they have motivation and they have reasons. They need to connect, they need to get fed, they need to be able to make things happen in their world without necessarily physically having to do it, right? They might, pick me up, carry me, you know, give me the food. The child can't make the food, the child can't buy the food, but the child can open their mouth and they can make something happen in their life. So they're very, very motivated to use this thing that they see people around them using to communicate. So they have strong reasons. But this isn't not just for language, it's for anything. So, for instance, many years ago, I was working with somebody's secretary and she was typing in Chinese and she didn't know in memory how to type in Chinese. So she would be checking her notes to see how to do this character, how to do that character all the time. It was very, very slow for her. And there was a major project that had to be delivered in 48 hours. And so she was working, and over that 48 hours, she learned to type from memory in Chinese because her brain was tired of having to check all the time, and it just became easier for the brain to remember what she needed and to then use it. So relevance is absolutely key. So a lot of people feel that, oh, they have to learn 3 languages and they have to spend 10, 20 years learning the languages because one day they might need it. That is a very, very difficult thing to do because it's not relevant. They may be working, they may be studying other topics, they may be learning medicine or electronics or whatever it is that they're focusing their energy on. And one of these languages that they're trying to learn is just not relevant to them at this time. The thing that everyone needs to understand is if you don't know a language, but you need it, when you need it, then you're going to learn it very, very quickly in 6 months, or some people less, depends on how close it is to your current language, or up to a year if you have enough time, right? If you don't have a lot of time, it'll take longer, but it's still going to be very, very efficient. So when you need it, when it's relevant, then you're going to learn it very, very quickly. So
Right.
that's the
If we
rel,
have to
rel,
like use, if we have the use of it, then our brain will like process it more efficiently.
if you have the use of it, your brain is going to process it much more efficiently, which brings us to the second part, which is you need to use language as a tool to communicate.
Right.
Um, so many people learn language as a subject of study that they're going to get examined on, but they're never even thinking about using it as a tool to communicate, right? It's like learning about the parts of a car, the steering wheel, the brake pedal, the tires, but never holding the
Right.
steering wheel and driving the car. You have to hold the steering wheel, you have to turn on the ignition, you have to press the accelerator, you have to press the brake, you have to learn to maneuver that car in space, right? So same with language. You have to learn how to use this sound to get that result, another sound to get another result. Oh, another sound made the girl laugh. Um, those are the things that make it both interesting and fun, but also make it easy to learn because you realize that with 20 words, 30 words, you can start communicating, even
Right.
though, yeah, even though you're not like speaking with formal grammar and anything else. But that brings us to something which I didn't include in the original principles, but it's like a super principle, which is when you're learning a new language, you must remember that you have to treat yourself as a baby once again. You might be 30 years old, but say you're learning German. You have to treat yourself as a 1 month old German baby. And you're going to be picking up the sounds the same way a baby does. You're going to be starting to say things the same way a baby does. You're going to use single words to transmit meaning the same way as a baby does. And you have to be comfortable with that, right?
Just
That's
by
a
making mistakes and like experimenting and all that,
making
just to
mistakes.
convey the meaning.
Exactly. So because you're doing so many things at the same time, it's impossible for anybody to get them all perfect. So you focus on little chunks that you can work with, and then you get a result and you build out from there. So that's the second principle: using language as a tool to communicate. The
Right.
third the third principle is very, very important, and it's For some people, it's gonna mess with their head when they hear this. It is when you understand the message, then you will acquire the language. So most people think I have to know what the words mean in order to understand the message. No. If you're understanding the message and at the same time you're hearing or seeing the words, then you will actually remember those words unconsciously. It's
Right.
called it's called comprehensible input, and Stephen Krashen has written a lot about that, and he's done a lot of research on that. But you have to understand, for any human communication, 85% of it is nonverbal. And so you can be in a situation. So for instance, I never seen this before, but when I went to China, right, people will do this.
And why would they do it?
Okay. Now in America they would do this.
Like to come here.
Yeah,
Right.
in China they do this. Okay. So if someone does this, goes lie 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 lie.
It means come here. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. So you got the meaning already, and you heard lie lie
And
lie
then I
lie,
understood the message.
and you
Right.
understood it, and subconsciously your brain is going to remember it. Okay, so this is really important. So when you
Right.
structure your own language learning, all you need to do is to structure it in ways that what you're hearing, you already know what it means. And there are many, many ways to do that. You can use pictures. You can, if you're with groups of people, you use body language. These things are all going to help significantly. Okay, so that's the third principle, to remember that as long as you're understanding the message, no matter how that happens, your brain is going to help you remember this unconsciously, and it'll help you organize the grammar and all sorts of things as well unconsciously. So that's the third principle. The fourth you have to understand is that it's physiological. That a lot of people think that it's about making lists of words and remembering the words. It's not like that at all. There are three major parts of physiology you have to be aware of. The first is that your hearing, your ears at a very basic level in the brain have filters, and they allow some sounds in and they don't allow other sounds in. So for a new language that you haven't heard before, they're actually blocking, the brain is blocking those sounds coming in. So you literally have to train yourself to hear the sounds. And the way you do that is you just listen a lot. Okay. The second is the face, the mouth. You've got 42 muscles, you've got the cheeks, the tongue, the throat. And the way you change, I'm going to do that a little bit now. I'm going to speak to you a little bit an English accent. It's not really England, it's Scotland. It sounds completely different, but you'll notice that the facial expression, the tension in the face, the muscles all change to make very different sounds for very different languages. Um, and that's absolutely key. A lot of people try to speak another language without changing how their face feels and how their muscles work in their face. And of course, you can never get the right sounds by doing that. And so the third thing physiologically is the brain. Um, you have to understand that you're going to be learning, and then your brain needs time to process it, and you need sleep, for instance, for the learning to layer in. What a lot of people do is they work too hard, they don't get enough sleep, they push themselves, and as a result, they don't make any progress. So you actually have to give your brain, your body time to rest, time to integrate the new information and the new things, that new patterns that you've been practicing. So that's the fourth one. It's physiological. And then the fifth is that your state is very, very important. If you're upset, if you're angry, if you're panicking, you're not going to learn very much. If you're relaxed, having fun, you in a alpha brain state, you're joyful, that's going to make the learning fast and easy. If you're curious, like kids are always curious, oh, how does that work, what's that? So these various different positive states are going to, as long as you're in those states while you're learning, you're going to be learning very, very, very effectively. Okay, so those are the five principles. um, Anything that comes to mind you would like to ask about that before I quickly talk about the actions?
Right. Uh, no, everything was quite clear. Like you have to uh, do the practice, then you need to make use of it, like use it as a tool, and you have to like not just learn the rules and about the language, but you have also to practice it. Like not just learning, reading how to drive, but also going behind the wheel and actually driving it.
Exactly,
And the
exactly,
mood
and
and like
exactly.
the expressions and the
Yep,
message, all things.
yep. Now the actions are really simple. Listen a lot. So just some people just sit down and study. No, no, no. You're exercising. Listen. You're in a taxi going to a meeting. You're in a bus going to school. Have the language in your ear, so you're listening to it. You don't have to understand what it means. You just have to listen to it lots and lots and lots. So when I was in Hong Kong, I would have to take taxis to meetings and stuff, and I would spend maybe an hour a day listening to the radio in the taxi because the taxi drivers would be playing the radio. So I was hearing Cantonese an hour a day just from the radio in the taxi. And I also was working in an office with somebody behind me who was on the phone all the time in Cantonese. So I didn't know what he was saying, but I was doing what I call brain soaking and just hearing the sounds a lot. And within a few weeks, I was able to start to understand what some of it meant and start using it and be able to speak accurately. So that's the first thing. The second thing is focus on the meaning first, which means do not worry about the grammar. Do not even worry about the spelling too much or the writing. You're going to get there. Focus on what does it mean, right? So that means lie, 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 lie. Okay. This,
Right.
wa, okay, wa, ni,
Come here, come here.
wa, right? So you focus on, oh, okay, I get what this means. And what you'll find quite often, especially if you're interacting with people, is you'll understand it. You'll understand it from the context, from the body language, whatever, and you won't know why or how you understand it. And a lot of people go, oh my God, I never learned it. So how can I understand it? And they freak out. But actually, you do because that's what we do. Humans can do this very, very well. Okay. The third thing you do is you start mixing. Okay. So for instance, you have, go, you have me, you have food. Okay. So I can say, me, you, go, food.
Yes, I will make the
All
sense
right. And
out of like you and I will go to eat food. Right.
exactly. You know it. So as soon as you have enough the words that represent what you need to be talking about, you start using them and you don't care about the grammatical structure that will come. You just make sure that you're mixing things together, putting them together in combination so you're getting the outcomes that you need. Now, the fourth thing is part of that is you focus on the core of the language. There's about 70 words in English, which are very, very high frequency and they're used everywhere and they tie the language together and we call them glue words. And then you've got the very common nouns. You've got um, objects in your house, things that we do daily. Eating, drinking, finding the bathroom, whatever it is. And in all, there's about 1,000 words in English, and pretty much every language is the same. That 1,000 words covers off 85% of anything you're going to need in general living and work. So with just 1,000, you're going to be not fluent, but you're going to be mobile and able to solve pretty much everything that you need to solve in life. When you get to 3,000 words, you're at about 97% of anything you're going to be meeting in daily life and in work. And if you notice, if you start listening to the people around you speaking your mother tongue, you will find most of the time they're speaking with this very limited set of vocabulary,
That right.
right? It's amazing how limited the vocabulary is for people most days in their life. So that leads to an issue. If you get a plateau, what do you do with the plateau? You actually have to start reading a lot in order to go beyond the plateau, because that's where you begin to get enough opportunities to meet new words. But if it's just daily conversation and daily life and business life in general, 3,000 words is going to give you almost everything you need, if not 100%. Another thing to do is to get what I call a language parent. A language parent is, if you look at a parent and a child, when the child is talking their mother tongue and they say something wrong, the parent doesn't say, "You're stupid, say it right." The parent will go, "Do you mean this?" So a little child might say, "My want but, my want but," and the father will say, or the mother will say, "Oh, you want a bath?" And the little kid will go, "Yeah, yeah, 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 my want but. Okay, let's have a bath. But. Yes, we're going for the bath now." So the parent is not correcting the child. The parent is understanding the child and modeling the correct form for clarification. So if a lot of people try to find someone who will teach them the language, and that teaching is like one way and then criticizing, "No, that's wrong, you should do it this." No, it should be an interaction based on what somebody has already got a little bit of, and then modeling what the language needs to be. So the interaction between a language parent and the learner is very, very different to a teacher and a learner. Another very good thing to do is to copy the face. So you look at the person who's speaking the language and you focus between the nose and the chin. So you're just looking at that as you're hearing it, and your brain knows how to understand how to move the muscles differently in the face in order to copy. And you hear it much more clearly when you're looking at the face. This is why people in masks all the time is a major, major problem now, because kids growing up with their mother tongue, they're not seeing any facial expressions. They're not even able to see how the mouth is moving for the language. So you're going to get kids with speech problems, kids with problems emotionally because they can't read emotions from the face. So being able to see the human face so you can understand that the communication is very, very important. And finally, like I said, a lot of people try to translate English to whatever, German to French, whatever. You don't do that. You need to connect the sounds that you're hearing to what we call internal representations. Now, by an internal representation, I mean, okay, this inside you have an internal representation. You understand what it's used for. You know the different shapes that this will come in, right? You have a concept about what it is, but it's all represented inside you as pictures, as feelings. How does it feel when you hold it? It sounds, right? So when you hear the word "be,"
Pen
okay,
comes into mind. P for pen.
exactly. But now you've connected "be" to all of those internal representations. So the way to learn is to make sure you're always triggering your internal representations and connecting the sounds of a new language to those internal representations. So then when you hear those sounds will trigger the internal representation. So now when I say to you "be,"
I
then
will get the image of pen and
you
all the
get
feelings.
you get the image and the feelings of pen. Exactly. And it's so simple. We do it as children learning our mother tongue. We know how to do it. We've just going through school, I think many people have forgotten it. So really that's it. Those 7 actions: listen a lot, focus on getting the meaning first, mix things, mix and match, focus on the core, get a language parent, copy the face, and always work on your internal representations.
Right,
That's
very
it.
interesting.
That's it. And then you can learn any language very, very quickly by applying those principles and using those actions.
Yes, so we can like sum it up as like the main points could be like focusing on the meaning and doing practice and using it as much as possible.
Exactly.
and like making use of the context to understand the meaning, like their
Exactly.
expressions and their movements and what they
Exactly.
do, just to
Exactly.
observe like a child.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes, sir. So that was very interesting and fruitful to know, and learned many new things as well. So now we will like get to the questions which people
Okay.
asked before the webinar, a few of them, and then we will take the live questions in the comment section. All
Okay.
right. So the first question is that is it easier to learn other languages than English, and how to improve your accent, especially
Oh,
French accent?
okay. They are they're very, very different questions. So let's look at, all right, whether or not English is difficult depends on what language you're coming from. So for a German speaker, English is actually not very difficult because the grammar in English is less complex than in German. The words in English are shorter generally than in German. So it's going to be quite easy because they're also related in certain ways. Um, if someone if an English speaker is learning Chinese, if they're learning Mandarin Chinese, it's going to be quite easy because the sounds of Mandarin are very close to English, not 100%, but a lot of overlap. But the sounds of Cantonese are very, very different. So Mandarin speakers learn English more easily than Cantonese speakers do.
So, like the mother tongue influences that if you have a mother tongue which have more complex structures, then you will easily learn the simpler structures.
Exactly. And so the Japanese have terrible trouble learning any language because the number of sounds in Japanese is very limited. It's much less than in other languages. So there's a lot of sounds that the Japanese literally don't hear.
Because
So
there
they
are
can't,
filters,
that because they're
as
filtered.
you mentioned.
Exactly, they're filtered and they don't hear the sounds, and so they can't actually speak very easily, and their word orders are a little bit different to other languages. So it really is a relative thing. Now, I think that question probably comes from this idea that English is difficult. I think any language that you try to learn in the traditional language classroom is difficult. I
Right.
I I, I tried to study Russian when I was at university and gave it up. I was terrible at French when I was at school. Um, but then I got a chance to go to Tahiti. I had a French student live in our house for 2 months, and I learned enough French in that short period of time to get second place in a national French competition. So any language that you're trying to learn in a classroom using traditional language techniques is going to be difficult and slow. It's even people who learn languages quickly and easily are not going to do very well in that context. All right, so I think, and so a lot of English around the world is taught with those traditional techniques, so it feels very, very difficult. The second thing is English now has over 1 million words. Um, English, French, I think has 100,000. So English now has words from every culture on the planet. It has all the new technologies, medicine, electronics are all pretty much happening in English. All of the publications are in English. The knowledge is exploding exponentially. So English feels really overwhelming because of that. But again, if you go back to normal daily interactions first, then that's manageable. Okay.
Right.
And
1,000 to
now,
3,000 words would be
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Now about accent, it's 100% around, are you willing to make your body feel different in order to make those sounds? So a guy, a French speaker. Now the question was about learning French, getting a French accent. I'll flip it around. There was a French speaker who came to me. He said, "I want to make my English accent sound native for English." So I said, "Okay, I'll help you." And we started working. And after about 20 minutes, his English was sounding really close to native. I just got him to change how he was using his face. And he said, stop, 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 stop. He said, I feel terrible. He said, this feels horrible. I do not want to have to feel like this. He said, you know what? I've decided to keep my French accent. So in order to get an accent, you actually have to be willing to change your physiology. It's really interesting. When I was learning Mandarin, some days I would wake up and my face would hurt. And it was because I'd been using my muscles the previous day in a different way to what it was used to. And it was uncomfortable. So it's like you've never done any press ups and you start doing press ups and your arms hurt. So you've never spoken with this accent, your face is going to hurt. But your face hurting tells you that you're doing it right. You're doing it the right way. Um, so, basically to learn a French accent, find French people that you can model. Don't just listen to them, look at them. You just and get into this sense of poetry and rhythm and the expressions that they use with their body, which are part of it, and play with it, and you'll be able to get those accents very, very well.
Right. We have to like mimic their best expressions and the part from like from year to year, as you mentioned.
Yeah, but also the whole body, the hand expressions, like the Japanese will when they're surprised by something, they'll go, hmm, hmm, right, and like that's you don't see that anywhere else. It's just Japanese do it that way, and you notice those things, you mimic those things, and you get into the frequency and the mind space of that language, and that helps the other parts of it as well.
Right. So, like learning other languages than English can be easier or difficult depending on your native language.
Yep,
And then for learning or improving the accent, you will have to like put yourself through effort by changing the way you use your muscles for speaking in one language
exactly,
and then the other way around for another language.
exactly.
Right. So now the other question that is that what is difference between Kung Fu English and Standard English? The Kung Fu
Okay,
English as you mentioned and Standard English as we have it.
okay. Kung Fu English is the brand name of a product.
All right.
It's a product that we developed, runs on an iOS, so it's an iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch device. It's a language in your pocket, and it was designed for Mandarin-speaking Chinese people to learn English. It's 3 gigabytes of content. It's video, it's audio. There's textual material, there are exercises and games and everything else. So, and we chose the word Gong Fu English um, because the word Gong Fu in Chinese actually doesn't mean martial arts. It means it means a skill developed over time. So it's mastery, and it's mastery because of the time put in to develop that mastery. So it's truth in advertising, right? Um, Nobody's going to inject the language in your brain. You have to do the work in order to get the language. Now, whether you're doing your workouts in the right way or the wrong way, high efficiency, low efficiency, that's going to determine how quickly and effectively you learn. So Kung Fu English teaches people how to learn with the methodologies that I've shared with you here, and it also provides the English content in a form that a Mandarin speaker is going to be able to understand it and learn it. So we branded it Kung Fu English. So it's it's completely different to standard English. Okay, it isn't two totally different concepts.
So are there like a lot of varieties of English like Indian English, Pakistani English, and American English? So they might have like took it as another variety of the English.
Yeah. No, it's no, not at all. Well, British English, right? There's something like 30 different accents in Britain, right? You got the Scots and the Irish, and the Southern Irish and the Northern Irish are different. But you've got Cornwall, you've got South London, you've got Yorkshire, Lancashire. They're all different accents. About 30 of them. Cockney from London area. In the US, you have 5 or 6 major language groups in English. And Australia, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Queensland are all going to be different. So yeah, in English, like globally, right? You've got Pakistani English, you've got Indian English, and Delhi English is going to be different to Kerala English.
Right,
Uh, yeah. And it's not just the sounds; it's the words that people choose to use, right?
right.
So, yeah, it's actually very very interesting. It's an interesting tapestry.
Yes, exactly. So with different varieties, we will have different vocabulary, different expressions, and so
Yep,
on, depending on
yep,
the culture in which it
yep,
is being used.
yep.
Therefore, the word not English, but English is now these are English is not just one English. So all
Exactly.
right. So now we will move on to. There is a question like, and question he gives his own example like he started learning Chinese, but after a month or so he lost interest and almost gave up the learning. So how can we cope up this problem? Like how we can be motivated to learn a language throughout?
All right. Well, again, um, let me tell a story, and that might help. A young guy from Australia came to see me many years ago now, 2005. This was before my book, The Third Ear, was published, and he wanted to learn Mandarin, but he believed that he couldn't. And so I asked him, so why do you want to learn Mandarin? He said, oh, I want to be able to deal with really basic daily conversation. And I said, okay, well, that's there's no way you're going to learn because your brain does not feel that that is a challenge worthy of you, right?
Right.
The challenge is not big enough. I said, so, and he said, but and then he looped around. He said, but I'm tone deaf. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. I said, okay, so you can hear tones. Oh, and I said, so what do you really want to be able to do with your Chinese? And he thought about it and he said, I'd like to be able to tell jokes in Chinese and have the girls laugh.
Right. So it was his man like
And once he
the
got,
motive.
yeah, once he got to, oh, that was what he really wanted, then he had his motive. I gave him the draft copy of the book I was writing. He read it for a couple of days. He then quit his job, went to Qingdao, spent 2 weeks sorting it out. He came back in 2 weeks already speaking some Mandarin. And then he went back and he used all the principles that we're talking about here. And within 6 months, he was verbally fluent. In less than a year, he was able to read and write to the level that he could look at legal contracts and work them out. And he got employed on the basis of his Chinese. All right.
Right.
So if you've lost your motivation, then you probably don't have a very good reason for why you're learning it. Number one. Number two, you're probably trying to rote learn stuff. The content you're using is not relevant for you. It's all text, no sound. I mean, there could be any number of reasons. I would need to know specifically what this person's actual situation was to diagnose it. But I would guess it's traditional language training, no real motivation, no real relevance for the person, no chance to use the language in any way, and so it becomes very very boring very quickly because you're not even seeing any progress and you don't know why you're doing it.
Right. So maybe he didn't have any where to use it as a tool, you may say.
Exactly.
Right. So now we have question like how it's a broader question, like it can get in many things anyways. So how can we teach linguistics in an innovative way?
How can we teach linguistics in an innovative way? Oh, so if you're talking about formal linguistics, I have no idea. But the, the 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 basic rule that I have for learning anything is that you need to make it really concrete, right? So people need to be able to see it, smell it, feel it, touch it, hear it.
Right.
They need so if you've ever watched Star Trek, you will see they have the holodeck, and they basically put people into a three-dimensional holographic role play, and that is how they learn. So I in years past I taught people statistics by doing things like having them get blindfolded and throw darts at a dartboard, and I had them playing running races up and down a workshop room, in order to teach the concept of degrees of freedom, which is n-1, right? So you can, we taught people human computer interface design by having them do things like have cardboard boxes with things in it, and they had to go in with their hands and feel what was inside. We had them playing games and simulations and all sorts of stuff, and totally transformed the learning experience. It's an incredible amount of work for the teacher to do that, but it makes it very real for the learner. Um,
Right.
the, the difficulty with a lot of learning for anything is people are writing at an abstract level, and that abstraction represents some concrete things, but they never talk about the concrete things. So someone's reading the abstraction and they have no idea what it refers to at a concrete level, and they have no idea how the pieces connect. So it's almost impossible to get into the discipline and learn anything. Now, people who already understand the discipline, they will read the abstraction and it's exciting for them because they know what it means. But you've got the same problem. You don't have comprehensible input because people don't understand the abstraction. So it's not comprehensible. So they can't get the meaning. So it's all lost on them. So I would say, as a general rule for teaching anything, you've got to go back to first principles and activate all of the sensory systems in your learner and help them directly perceive what it is that they need to learn. Um, that's going to be a major part of it. Now, there's going to be abstraction, but once you give them enough concrete stuff to work with, they will make their own abstractions.
Right. So we have to make a connection between the theory and the practice itself. So that would be
Yeah,
easier for the students to learn.
yeah, exactly. So you're learning electronics, right? So what's a resistor, right? Yeah, and how do you tell how big, how strong a resistor is, how much it resists, right? You got to hold it, you got to see it, you've got to understand that it's creating pressure that won't let something through, right? And all of these come back down to some physical sense. Uh,
Right.
at the end of the day, it's all going to be a physical sense in some way.
Right. We will have to see the things actually working, then we can
Yes,
learn them.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. Yep.
So now we will move to another question. Uh, sir, while I find a question, I have a question, one question myself. Like, there was a very interesting thing that you told that, uh, in contemporary time, people are mostly wearing the masks, and children would have very many difficulties in learning the language and to know the facial expressions and express themselves through these facial expressions.
Yep.
So I want you to like elaborate more on it.
Okay. Um, well, in the developmental stages, children, okay, you watch a little kid, right? And the kid will be communicating with the mother, right? And the kid will actually be gazing right at the face of the mother. They need to see what's going on. They need to see whether it's a smile, whether it's something else, um, and whether it's angry, whether it's puzzled. But they can't, you can't see any of that. And for a child growing up, they don't even know what these expressions are, right? If they've not seen them, they will never know what those expressions are. And there is an idea of stage sensitivity. So your brain is primed for certain types of information at certain ages and stages. And if you don't get that information when you need it in the developmental process, then you end up with a stunted brain. Basically, your brain, that part of your brain that needed to develop, didn't have the stimulus it required at the time, so it didn't develop. All right. So, you know, facial expressions are an absolutely critical component of human communication. So if children growing up are not seeing the faces of their parents, of their friends, then they're getting zero stimulus. And so their brain is just not developing. So they go a couple of years and then they look at faces and they cannot understand anything from the facial expression.
Right. And
All
also
right.
they won't be able to like teach their or convey those facial expressions to their children. Like new generation would lack that
Exactly.
quality.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And of course, yeah, there's a lot more going on there, but we won't talk about that. It's a rather big topic.
Yes, it is. So we have got a question. Like there is a concept that when teaching a language, we shouldn't use our native language to explain things, or we should rather use the one target language with the students. So we have question regarding that. How can I use my ability to speak the native language of my students as a bridge and not a wall in helping them learn a foreign language?
Okay, so it's actually a very, very good question. Um, we come back to this idea of comprehensible input.
Right,
Okay,
by
so
creation.
right, so if I say to you, 把笔给我, right, 笔给我, and
P.
you will
Give me the
understand. Give
pen.
me exactly, exactly.
Uh,
So I was using the target language, but I was doing things that allowed you to get the meaning.
right.
So that works,
APK like give me the pen.
right?
So
Now, 如果我开始跟你说中文的语法是怎么样 ，OK，我们有动词、名词什么之类的，OK，like you're lost.
yes, completely.
You're lost, right? And I was saying, so if I'm going to tell you about Chinese grammar, we've got verbs and nouns, and there's no way you can connect to any meaning in what I'm saying.
Right,
So the prerequisite of using the target language to communicate is that you must structure it in a way that the learner can understand the meaning, even if they don't know the words yet. Okay.
right,
Now, the way to do that, you can use the mother tongue, and the way to do that is to do what we call lexical mapping. So I could do this, and I go 镜子, okay? So you've seen it, right? But if I can't show you, I can say mirror, 镜子. I
right,
can say I can say glasses, 眼镜. I can say give me the mirror, 给我镜子.
right. So instead of like giving them a physical reference, we will give them a linguistic reference. Like by
What we're
seeing the
doing,
mirror.
yeah, go on. Sorry, you finish first.
Yeah. So by watching the mirror, they were connecting that word to it, but now they already have the feelings and the image with the word mirror. So now when you compare those two, they will make connection of it.
Exactly. So what we did in Kung Fu English, we put all the content, a lot of it we would use Chinese, English. And so you're hearing the Chinese, and it's all with music. So you've got rhythm, you've got a way to get your brain activated. All sides of your brain is activated. You get relaxed, you're having fun, and you're hearing gay. So I'll flip it the other way. Gay, gay. Okay. Me, what? Okay. Water, 水, water, 水.
Okay, shui.
Give
Give me
give
the
me
water.
water. 给我水. Boom. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. All right. So and as a learner, what you have to do is to consciously allow your internal representations to get triggered by your mother tongue. So when you hear the target, you already know the meaning and you're connecting it. So that's how you use the person's mother tongue as a bridge into the new language. You don't try and do lots of explanation about grammar or anything else. That's irrelevant. What you need your learners to do is to connect these new sounds to those internal representations to the point that it's automatic. Then they're going to be speaking the language.
Right. So that's okay. And now we will move on to another question. That is, like some master students who specialize in linguistics desire to have a legacy in the discipline. So, what's advice for them to have successful outcomes?
Change the world.
Yes.
All right. The way you have a legacy in anything is to bring a contribution or your gift to the world in a way that changes the world for the better. That is going to be your legacy. Hopefully it's for the better, right? You can develop a bomb and blow the world up and you will still have a legacy. Not a very nice legacy, but you have a legacy. But the way that you do that is you focus on something that you know is inside you and that you know is something you can bring into the world. And then you do the work necessary to make it accessible to others, and others can start using it, and it adds value to their life. So that's, I've taken that out abstract because I think this idea of a legacy is not about linguistics. It could be about anything. So if you're in linguistics, maybe you're studying somebody like Noam Chomsky, and you actually feel that Noam Chomsky is talking a load of rubbish. And so you might then go searching and you might find somebody by the name of Robert Van Valen, who developed what is known as role and reference grammar, RRG. And it's an analysis of different languages based on how they operate functionally. And what is very, very interesting is that the RRG theory maps very closely to what we're talking about in terms of how people learn language. Okay, so that's a different concept in linguistics, but that may be limited. So you would make a contribution by challenging that and going to the next level, right? And for instance, a guy by the name of John Ball, who's taking language and helping computers understand language with this stuff, and he has what he calls pattern theory, which is theory of how the human brain works using patterns in as atoms. So the atom patterns, right? So you've got these atomic patterns in the language, and that is how we understand language. It is how language is very efficient. It is how it is um, infinitely variable based on simple groupings into words in terms of how they work. So that's a contribution that will leave a legacy. So it's always taking what's there, questioning it, taking it to the next level, um, allowing your intuition to help you see where you can come at this from a very different angle and bring incredible value into the world. If you do that, you're going to have a legacy. Uh,
Right.
right.
Bringing something novel, like in any field you are in.
Yeah, and changing people's lives, right? You may leave a legacy because you're in a difficult subject area and most people can't teach it, but you found a way to make it really easy and understandable for people. So you change the lives of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people just by changing how you communicate about that subject. That's going to leave a legacy.
Right. So that was quite interesting. Like I also had that question sometimes, like how can I leave a legacy in my field? So that was the questions from the registration forms. Now we will take some live questions.
Sure,
So the
please.
participants, uh, you can now type your questions in the comment box, and then Sir Chris will address them. So let's see. So here we have a question, I guess, related to individual differences.
Okay. What makes it difficult to learn a language? Why is it that some individuals learn and acquire languages faster than others? Um, okay. There are two parts to that answer. Um, some children will learn language more quickly than other children, and that's the mother tongue, and that's simply because um, their rate of development is just a little bit different. Okay. Um, Almost all children will grow up being able to speak their mother tongue fluently. Um, the of course, with autism and other issues like that, then that's a different issue. They're essentially disabled, so their ability to learn language has been essentially destroyed or damaged. So that's why. If you're talking about adults, um, a major factor is emotional state. A lot of adults are terrified of being wrong, so they won't try. A lot of adults try to have everything in mind at the adult level before they even begin to try to speak the language. And so they make no progress. I met a man a number of years ago and he had an insight. And it was like, he said to me, he said, I have been trying to be perfect in the language before I opened my mouth to speak it. And he said, I've realized I have to start speaking it few words and then I'll get to the point where I can actually use it at a native level. And that is the thing. You have to be willing. So the people who acquire languages really slowly are not motivated. They are trying to be adult level when they're a baby in the new language. They're not hearing it. It's not relevant to them. They're not using it as a tool. They're not paying attention to their physiology. They're terrified to interact with other people in this language in case they make a mistake. So there's a number of factors, but if you put them all together, someone who has all of those worries, they're going to learn really, really slowly. And someone who says, okay, I'm a baby and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to speak in single words and I'm going to play with my mouth and I'm going to play with the sounds, they're going to listen a lot like a baby does, then they're going to learn quickly. It really is that simple. Now, the other dimension to this is that the speed at which you learn the new language will quite often be dictated by the competence you have in your mother tongue. So if you're really competent in your mother tongue, you read widely, you have lots of words, you have lots of background knowledge, then you probably are going to learn a new language more quickly than someone who has limited vocab, who doesn't speak very well in their mother tongue. And I've seen that. People whose mother tongue is not very good, they slow at learning a new language. People whose mother tongue is really strong, they learn the new language quickly.
Right. So for up till now, we have talked about how to like talk and speak the new languages, like by mimicking or by like understanding the meaning or focusing on the meaning and the context. So now we have a question regarding like how they can improve the grammar.
Okay. All right. The easiest way to improve the grammar is to get lots of comprehensible input so you're understanding the meaning. Now, it could be in spoken, it could be written. So you're reading a lot. The research in the comprehensible input area shows very clearly that you have comprehensible input and you're reading stuff that you understand, you naturally learn the grammar. You unconsciously pick up the grammar. So you don't improve your grammar in English by trying to remember how to do grammar in English. You improve grammar in English by, if you like reading books, say adventure books. So you read adventure books in English and you read for pleasure. And so you're focused on the story, you're focused on the meaning, and you're going to pick up the grammar. I hated grammar studies in English at school. I was not very good at it, but I read very, very widely. And so my grammar in English is perfect. My grammar in Chinese is pretty much perfect as well, because I read a lot and I also write a lot. And then I get an editor to check my writing. So basically, through that process of the editor checking the writing, the grammar naturally gets improved. So you'll find that as you're using the language, you'll have a feeling, that doesn't feel the right way to say it. I need to say it this way. And if you follow that feeling, your grammar is going to be right. And that feeling comes because at a subconscious level, you've already learned that grammar. You just can't articulate it. You can't talk about it. You can't say, this is a clause, this is a subclause, this is a gerund or whatever. It's like native speakers don't care about that stuff. They care about how do I get the meaning across and how do I put these words together in a way that feels right. And that feeling right is the grammar, and that grammar is internalized at an unconscious level. And the way we get to that is by using comprehensible input in hearing and reading, and then subsequently writing and getting people to look at it and make suggestions.
Right. Like when we use the language, we will internalize the grammar. But if we
Yeah,
have to pass a test of grammar, then we will have to read the books and the names, like this is noun, this pronoun, and this that. So that's the other thing. Like, but the
exactly.
language is related with the grammar, names in the books. So these rules will
Exactly.
be internalized.
Exactly. And the trouble with the formal grammar is, for instance, you're talking about a noun, right? Well, a noun can become a verb,
Yes, it can be.
right?
Like jump. Jump
Yeah.
can be a
Well,
noun.
exactly. Google is a noun, but
Right.
now it's also a verb. Google it.
Yes. Google it. Right.
Okay. So this idea we have fixed nouns and fixed verbs, it's wrong. No. We have signs that refer to things, and we can use it as a verb, as an adjective. The
Right.
same word can be used as an adjective and as a noun, right? So formal grammar is less important than understanding how these signs are used to represent the meaning, and then how we're putting them together in order to get the larger meaning. And we do most of the processing on that subconsciously, and we those subconscious rules. And a lot of the rules, why are the rules there? I found I was in Thailand for a little bit, and I was trying to speak a bit of Thai, and there was I can't remember the example, but there was one particular sentence that I thought the grammar was this way, and but in this context it was flipped. So the word order was the other way. And I said, so why is the word order different for this other way? And they said, they had no idea. And I listened to it and I thought about it, and basically the word order changed in that context for that particular phrase because it was easier to say. Less energy was used by the mouth to say it that way than the way that was correct in grammar,
Right. So just the
right?
focus was on the message and not the
The
form.
focus was on the message and the efficiency, the energy efficiency of the communication. And we do that all the time. We shorten things, we abbreviate things, we change our word order because that is easier for the mouth to say. I mean, there's so much of that stuff. If you get into it and examine languages, you'll see those patterns coming out.
Like in English, we say I'm gonna do it instead of I am going to do it. Just
Yeah,
shorten it into gonna do it. I'm going
exactly.
to gonna. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Perfect
grammar
example.
wouldn't work over there.
Yeah.
There are
And
lots of
and
exceptions.
exactly. And then of course you have grammar Nazis who go, no, you can't say gonna, you have to say going to.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to look at that.
Again, using the gonna. All right. Yes. So as there was one sentence which I wrote some time ago, like in academic English, they don't use informal words or more adjectives or something. So there was a line written that sadly we cannot use sadly in academic writing. So that's
You rebel, you.
right. So that's the same example as you have it. I'm gonna
Exactly,
look into that.
exactly, exactly.
Right. So now there is question we shouldn't worry about. Right. We shouldn't worry about grammar, right? Then must we tolerate those speakers who are grammatically incorrect rather than encouraging them to aim perfection in their grammar?
Okay. If this is coming from a teacher, then um, okay, there's a couple of dimensions to answering this. Grammar actually is one component of meaning. So if your grammar is not quite right, it will make it more difficult for the listener or reader to get your meaning.
Right.
Okay. So grammar has a function, grammar has a purpose. Okay. So if someone's grammatically incorrect, you're going to understand what they mean. It's going to feel a bit uncomfortable, and it requires more brain processing power from you to understand what they mean. Okay. So them not having correct grammar makes it difficult for them a little bit because their communication gets hindered a little bit. Okay. Now, rather than encouraging them to aim for perfection in their grammar, if you're a teacher, you need to hear what they're saying and you understand it, and you be a language parent and you say, so you mean this, right? Or you would very quickly, after they said something, you would repeat it back because it made sense in context, but you would model the correct grammar. And what's going to happen is the learner will notice the change, the difference between what they said and what you're saying. They will feel empowered and encouraged because you haven't criticized them. They will go, okay, I need to do that, and they will make the change. So that's the second part of the answer. The third part of the answer is very, very interesting. If you've ever worked with kids and you correct their grammar or you give them the right pronunciation, you will find that even though you've told them, they don't change. And the reason they don't change is that their brain is not yet ready to accept that information and to integrate it. So telling them again and again and again to make the change won't work because their brain is not ready. Same with an adult. If your brain is not ready to absorb to this layer of how the information works, even if you tell them, they're not going to be able to use it or process it or remember it. And forcing them to remember it, forcing them to use it, is actually going to create emotional resistance, which is going to damage and slow down their learning. So you understand what they mean, you model back to them as quickly as possible within that makes sense naturally, and they will either get it and process it and integrate it, or they won't because they're not ready. So every time you have the chance to give that feedback loop, you give it, and sooner or later, they are going to be able to actually master that element of the grammar.
Right. So for this, now we have two questions, and I think they are related in some way. The first question is like, why is it difficult to understand someone when you talk on the phone? And the other question is, in what way that facial expressions affect learning English? So I think we can link these two questions, like talking on the phone and its
Yeah,
difficult
yeah, exactly,
expression.
exactly. Actually, the phone, there's two elements to it, three elements to it. The first element is that you cannot see the facial expressions, so you have a lot less information than if you were face
Right.
to face. But you also can't see the body language. That's one element. The other element is that the audio quality is going to be an issue. So this is why, um, you know, in military communications, they in the aircraft they have Tango, Foxtrot, Lima for the alphabet letters, right? TFL, Tango, Foxtrot, Lima. They actually use full words to represent the 26 letters of the alphabet. And in
So
China, go ahead.
like I was confused with that, like how they do it, like the code you said,
Okay. So can you tell the difference between I and E?
I and E,
Yeah.
not in many words.
Right.
Like
So they basically they spell things out, right? So I don't know what the Y would be, but you FLY, right? So you'll have Foxtrot, Lima, and Lambda, I think they use for Y, right? So they'd be spelling out, so it would be a call sign for an aircraft, which is FLY, and they would actually use the full words. And they use the full words because it's very easy when you're speaking the letters to get confused. So I'll give you an example in Chinese. Um, the counting from 0 to 9 is 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 okay, but the military will go dong for ling for 0, they will say yao, they will go liang, okay, qi is guai, that's 7. So they literally have different sounds for the same written symbols for radio communication because of the distortion and the data loss in the signal over radio and over the phone. So it's more difficult to understand someone talking on the phone because you're losing auditory information in the signal.
right. So they use like a shorter version of those words.
No, they'll even use completely different sounds. So 东摇两三四五六拐八九. So the ones that are not easily confused, they keep the original. The ones that are easily confused, they've literally changed the whole sound.
Right, to make it like more differentiated from one another.
Make it more differentiated. So if you're on the phone to someone and you're hearing these sounds, then they're not differentiated enough. Okay, so you're actually having difficulty, and you're not getting any visual representation. So you have even less information with which to make the decision: is it this or is it this?
Right. So
And the other one question was,
like there were two like how can the facial expressions can affect English, learning English.
well, the facial expressions affect learning any language in that when you can see the face, you are much more able at a subconscious level to know how to make the sounds. That's number one. Number two, the facial expressions are going to help you understand the meaning, so you have comprehensible input. So you actually get the meaning from the facial expression and the body language. And so then when you hear the sound, even though you may have never heard it before, you're able to connect that sound to the meaning that you're already understanding. So, you know, um, if someone sort of goes, ha, 开玩笑啊,
Something
right?
funny.
Yeah, exactly. And the exact phrase was, you're joking,
Right.
right? So you don't speak Chinese, you understood it from the context. If that happened half a dozen times in a day, you would actually remember 开玩笑. And so you've learned it because you were able to get the meaning, and then you heard the sound. So the facial expression is part of that, right?
Right.
It's not just facial expression, but the facial expression is an important component of all of that.
Right. So now we will take another question. That is, I have different sentence structure comparing two normal speakers.
Okay, brilliant, because sign language is a different language.
That's it.
That's it. Sign language is a different language. And in sign language, because the signs are very concrete, they're mapping concrete hand movement to concrete object.
They're
So in
not
sign
using
language,
sound.
they're not using sounds. They're not using sounds. So they can't, all right, they can't really, they probably, I don't know, they probably have like tags, markers for tense, for instance, past tense. I don't speak sign language. I don't use sign language, but they will probably have markers for this is future, this is present, this is past. So they would go something drinking, and then they're tagged for past, they're tagged for future. So, I want to go for a drink. So drink future is I want to go for a drink. Drink past is we were drinking, sort of thing. So you need to look at sign language as a completely different language that is mapping these symbols to the internal representations. So in order to learn sign language, you're going to have to know the meaning that's being communicated in your mother tongue, and then make sure you've got those internal representations, and then map them to the signs in the sign language. And that's how you're going to learn sign language quickly. So, so sign language is like Japanese or some other language. It's not the language that you speak done in signs. Is I think the key point. It's actually it's its own unique language.
Right. So whatever the form is, we will always need a meaning to connect with that form.
You always
It
need a
may,
meaning to connect with that form. If you don't have the meaning, trying to map one to the other is an impossible task.
right. So there's an interesting question like, do multilinguals can easily learn more languages than monolinguals or bilingual?
Okay, another great question. All right. Monolinguals have real difficulty getting to bilingual. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Bilinguals are baby multilinguals. If somebody is truly bilingual, which means they can flip from one language to the other. 所以现在我在用中文，我就是跳到普通话，跟住呢我就用廣東話咧咁樣講啦 and back to English. And I'm just moving between one language and the other, Mandarin, Chinese, Cantonese, English, and
Code
there's no
switching.
break. No break. And each of those languages is coming from the internal representations. Okay.
Right.
So that's trilingual. So bilingual is going to be able to switch in and out of either sound system, both going back to the same internal representations. Okay. So because they can do that, then getting another language will be easy for them. And a multilingual will get even more languages more easily because they have learned how to learn language, and they understand that basic principle of learning a language, which is not swatting with a textbook, but using it, connecting with the body, connecting with the internal representations, working with the face, all of that stuff. That's going to be natural to a multilingual. Monolinguals have a real difficulty for a few reasons. One, their hearing system is locked down. They don't have the filters opened up. Their muscles are tight. They're not flexible because they've not practiced moving from one sound system to another. But even more importantly, they have this internal perception that the sound of a word is the thing. So back to our example. For a monolingual, pen, the sound pen in their mind is this thing. The sound is the same as this thing. So if I call it up, they can't deal with that because no, it's a pen. They don't realize that the sounds are simply labels for these things. And you can have a different color label. You can have a different shaped label. You can have a label that smells different.
Right.
They
Right.
don't get that. They think that the label is the thing. And so because of that, they have real difficulty moving into another language because they've lost their foundation. Okay. As soon as they understand that and they're willing to accept the idea that, oh, language is just a labeling system and I can learn a new labeling system and my internal representations are still the same. As soon as they get that, it totally changes their learning. They come at it in a very different way and much more comfortable and confident.
Right. They need to learn that meaning is arbitrary. It can be associated with any sound or form.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
But the solid physical thing is not arbitrary.
Yes, that's just fixed thing. Right.
That's the fixed thing. That's the fixed thing, right? So the labels are arbitrary. The
Labels
world is
are
not. Yeah, the world is not. And as soon as you realize the labels are arbitrary, you can call it anything,
yes, we can try
right? So I could call this an ink spreader.
Inquisitor, yes. Like
Ink
in
spreader,
Urdu, it can be called a kalam.
right? A kalam, right?
Yes.
So kalam. Okay.
Right. So I think that's all, and now we can conclude the session. So, sir, do you have some words for the audience or anything that you want to share?
Okay. I think everyone needs to remember that you are a language learning genius. You learned a language all by yourself with nobody teaching you when you were very, very, very little, and you did it successfully. Okay. So you've already learned an unknown language by yourself. You just need to remember how you did that and apply the principles that you used when were doing that, and the next language for you will be easy. They're not. It won't be like falling out of bed, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to happen quickly. Um, you're not going to do it in a day, but you're going to make significant progress in weeks, and within a year, you're going to be very competent. So just remember that you know how to do it already. You've already done it. Um, we're all genius at learning language. We're all genius at using language. So you just apply your own genius, and you will be surprised at the results that you get.
Like start from the baby steps. Right.
Start from baby steps. Yep.
Right, sir. So, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your valuable time and like addressing questions, a lot of questions. So that was very kind of you, and hope to see you in next webinars as well if we can
Uh,
arrange them.
Awais, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for arranging it. And I thought the questions were great. And I hope that the answers are helpful to everybody here.
Yes. So, so that's all about it. So thank you very much, and let's conclude this wonderful session.
A pleasure. A pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
All right, participants. So that was Chris Lonsdale giving us the time and the opportunity to ask questions from him, and he shared his knowledge with us. So thank you all the participants for joining us, and now we will be sharing the feedback link, and all the participants will have to fill the feedback link in feedback form in order to receive your certificates. So I will be sharing the link in a moment. Please be with us. So let me just send you the link to fill the form. I'm going to send the feedback link. Just hold on a minute. And for those people who haven't registered or when they were registering, the registration was closed, it's totally fine if you have joined in the live session. So if you haven't filled the feedback form, it's okay. You can fill the feedback form. The registration form is not necessary for the certificate. I'm going to send the feedback form link, and if you fill that form, you will receive the certificate. So in just a minute, I will be sharing the feedback form link in the comments. All right. So And make sure you write your correct name, the name you want on the certificate, and also the correct email, and the certificates will be sent to the emails you provide in the feedback form. So make sure you write them correctly and not make any mistake, and double check it before submitting the form. So I will be just sending it in a minute. Alright, so the form is all set. You are only required to give your name and email and any comments. Comments are like optional. So alright, so I have sent the feedback form link. So kindly fill the feedback form link in order to receive your certificates. And thank you everyone for joining. The feedback form link is in the comments. Kindly fill the form. Those who don't fill the form or fill the form incorrectly won't be getting the certificates for participation. So we have 11 responses, 13 responses so far. You can also write any suggestions for new topics on which you want webinars in the comments section of the feedback form. Choto decide. Peda udah nah. So the feedback form link is given. Whoever fills the feedback form will receive the certificates. So kindly fill them, and then feedback forms are available for a limited time for an hour or so to fill them. And if you have any suggestions or any comments regarding webinars or any suggestion about the next topic, you can write it in the feedback forms comment section. And make sure you write your correct name and your correct email, because that name and that email will be used to send you the certificates. And I'm here for you if anyone has some concern regarding the form or somebody having trouble in filling the form, they can ask me here on YouTube. So we have 45 responses so far. And if you guys want to contact us, you can contact us at linguistics and pedagogy webinars at gmail.com. So we have 51 responses so far for the certificate. And once again, thanks to all for joining and for being interactive and asking questions and making this webinar a success. hope to see you in next webinars as well. Thank you everyone, and we have got 57 responses so far. The feedback form link is given in the comment section. And also, if you want to support us and see new webinars, and like if you want to join more of them, then you can help us by sharing this platform with your friends and your classmates and teachers as well. If your teachers want to become a speaker or give a presentation, they can. So share our platform with your friends and tell them about it to support us. And also, if somebody is watching this webinar from a third party app, like not from the YouTube directly, he may be facing some problem in filling the form. So if you are not watching this in a Chrome browser or Firefox browser, or if you haven't logged in your Google ID, then you must open the YouTube and like sign in Google first, and then open YouTube and watch the video from there. Then you will find the comment section, and if not, then open your mobile phones and open YouTube from it, and then you will be able to access to the form. So we have 64 responses on feedback form. So currently there are 33 live viewers. So I thank you all again for joining and actively participating in the webinar. So we will be ending this live session in 5 minutes or so. Until if you have any question you can ask here regarding the form. If you are facing any difficulty, we have 67 responses so far and 69 now. So and to those who are saying thank you sir, thank you as well, and it was great to have you all. So once again I have sent the feedback form link in the comment section, so go and fill it. And if you cannot access the link, try to copy the link and then pasting the link in a browser like in Chrome or Firefox or something like that. So paste it in internet browser separately, and then you might be able to get access to it. And if not, then you can send a screenshot to our email, and then we will forward your certificate. Like here is the email: linguistics and pedagogy webinars at gmail.com. So if you can't access the link, first try to copy this link and paste it in the browser, any web browser. And if you are still not able to get access, check if you are logged into your Google account. And if it isn't working either, then you can take a screenshot of this webinar and then send it to linguistics and pedagogy webinars at gmail.com, and we will provide you a certificate. And those who are filling the form, make sure they write their correct names and emails. If there is any mistake uh, in the certificates, then it would be a trouble for both you and us. So make sure you write the correct name and correct email and double check it before submitting the form. So there is a minimum chance of error. Thank you. And do share uh, this platform and about this platform with your friends so they can also join and get benefit from it. And if you have any suggestions regarding the webinars, you can give them in feedback form. So we have 79 responses so far on the feedback form, now 80, and there are still 21 viewers. So thank you everyone, and we have been here till 1 hour and 36 minutes. I will be here with you for another 4 minutes so that you may fill your forms, and if you have any trouble, comment here. So now I'm sharing the feedback form again, and we have 81 responses so far, and those who have filled the form can leave the session. Like, we aren't going to share anything else here. And do like our page if you want to be uh, if you want to be in touch with new webinars and details and all of that, and regarding certificates that have they been sent or not, you can find that information on our Facebook page. So, and also you can contact us at our email, that is linguistics and pedagogy webinars at gmail.com. So now we have got 84 responses so far, and in 1 minute we will end this live stream. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you on future webinars as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so for 1 more minute I will be with you. So 85 responses. Make sure you write your correct name and email in the feedback form. So that's all. Now I'm going to end this live broadcast, and this video of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. And that's all. And thank you for being a part of it. And it was great having you all with us. Thank you very much.